All right. Hello. Um, Still fixing my hair from the shower, but I promised everybody on X that since I hit 400 followers, I would make a video saying thank you. Thanks for following my journey. It's been crazy. I have had a Twitter account since it was still called Twitter. I think back earlier in my learn to code journey. I wanna say, like, probably 2020, no, earlier, like 2019, I think, maybe even 2018. I had a Twitter account, and I had some earlier ones too. I've been trying to, like, get Twitter to, like, take them down because they're cringe, so I probably shouldn't have said that because now y'all are gonna go look them up, but, college-aged me had a lot of things to say, apparently. Not all of them were funny or I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyways, I'm getting really off topic. So thanks for thanks for following my journey and for taking an interest in either me or quality assurance or whatever I've helped you with. And continuing to give me the chance to share my knowledge with you and maybe inspire or motivate you in your career or you know whatever. I've met a lot of really cool people on X, and I want to continue to do so. It's really been a place like they say that this term in maybe sociology called like third spaces, and it's like a safe place in addition to the home, and maybe I don't know, maybe work is like the second. I forget, but yeah, it's been therapeutic to have a place like X to go where I have really positive people, high quality people that I've been able to meet. And yeah, it's a fun journey. But I promised you something else. I promised you that I would tell you about my journey into tech and how I even got to be an SDET or a software development engineer and test or sometimes it's called a QA automation engineer, like quality assurance automation engineer. Some places call it a test engineer. There's a lot of names for it, just like developer, programmer, um, engineer. Yeah, anyways, so I'm gonna spin you a yarn today. I have a little outline. I was actually inspired by someone I met recently on X, Mal, because she has a video similar to this about her own journey, and I really like the format, so I'm stealing it. uh, I have this little outline here to keep me focused. So let's back way up to 2016 in Spain. So I was when I was in college back in 2016. I was towards the end of my degree program. I was studying to be a high school Spanish teacher. So my trip abroad was for the Spanish half of that, where I would be working on my bilingualism and just fine tuning the advanced concepts of the Spanish language and trying to use it as much as possible. And to this day, I still have a pretty decent command of it. I've lost a lot of vocabulary, and that really shoots me in the foot sometimes. But I still have a good command of the grammar. I'm not going to do any in this video though, so believe me or not, I don't care. But yeah, I was in Spain, and I didn't really, I think I still knew I wanted to be a Spanish teacher at that point, and I got really good at Spanish. And at the time, I was thinking like, I got to get some kind of internship experience. I'd love to be able to use this when I get back. But I came back in December of 2016, and then winter break happened. Then spring semester came. I think I was only going part time because at this point finances started to be a little shaky for me with my college degree. My parents were really financing most of my degree that wasn't covered by student loans, and yeah, I guess eventually the cash for that ran out. So I remember them telling me that, like, I remember my dad driving me home from the airport. I think it was then that he said that this is, the last semester that we can pay for basically, and you and your sister are on your own. And it was just I was shocked and worried because I hadn't had to pay for my own education up to that point, which is a massive privilege. I get that. And there's tons of people out there, like even in my degree program, who are working full time on the breaks to be able to afford to come back the next semester. And so I was honestly just living on easy street up until that point. So maybe it needed to happen because looking back, it taught me a lot about. Oh, my cat is on my keyboard. 1 second here. She is adorable. I need to quit Apple Music now because she just opened that. There we go. Here, why don't you come over here? Okay. Let's see how long she stays, right? So, yeah, started thinking about my options, and I applied to this summer camp that seemed like a really good opportunity to make me marketable as a teacher coming out of college. If you've ever heard of it, Concordia Language Villages, look it up if you haven't heard of it. Um, Long story short, I did get a 12-week contract with them to go and live at their summer camp, their Spanish like dual immersion camp, where I would be a camp counselor. I'd be teaching kids, like my cabin of 12 kids that I'd be sharing with two counselors. And we'd be teaching them Spanish through learning activities and, living summer camp life at the same time. It sounded like a pipe dream. I'm like, this is the coolest job I've ever had the privilege of getting. So I'm really looking forward to this. Fast forward 6 weeks into the actual summer camp job, I was miserable. I should mention for context, at the time, I was not in a very healthy relationship. My partner at the time, different partner than the one I ended up marrying, my wife now, who is amazing. Yeah, it wasn't going well with this other person, and that was kind of seeping into my experience at the camp. But also, I didn't really like managing a group of kids. It felt like, this isn't really something I'm passionate about. I don't like essentially babysitting, but also having to wrangle kids so that they can like learn a thing. Um, trying to trying to ask for attention while trying to teach, it just felt exhausting and not fun and not really what I was in it for. And I realized, like, 'cause since there were some veteran teachers there, they were saying that it's pretty much like that in the classroom too, because you still have to kind of sell the kids on paying attention to you. And I'm like, I'm not here to try to sell kids on listening to me. I want them to show up uh, ready to take notes, and that was a little idealistic and naive of me to think that that would actually happen, because that wasn't me in high school either. I mean, I was a good student. I had it easy as a student, so I never really had to study that much. But thinking back now, there were tons of kids who were just buttholes to the teacher, and they had to the teacher would spend some of the class just trying to get them on track. I'm like, that's not my idea of a good time. So, yeah, at this point, uh, I was begging the camp director, like, please let me go. Please, I don't want to work here anymore. I need to go home. I was wussing out, I guess, just trying to leave. And, they tried to convince me to stay, but I wasn't having a good time and I was pretty depressed. So, they let me go home with the 6 weekers because I guess they had 12-week and 6 week contract people. So I got to go home on the bus with the 6 week people, which meant I kind of had to get a job like right away because, I didn't have any income waiting for me and I couldn't just, go back to school because I didn't have any money to. My financial aid wasn't, I think it was maxed out at that point. I wasn't 24 yet, and if anybody in the US who's gone through college and has used FAFSA before knows, if you're an independent, you become an independent at like 24 years old, which means that the amount of like student loans you can get uh, is dependent on your income, not your parents. And my parents made more than 100K on paper, even though they had like debt and stuff. So like they couldn't just shell out for school anymore. And yeah, I was kind of capped by my parents until I hit 24 the following year. But until then, I kind of had to keep busy. I had to like figure out how to blow a year until I could get financial aid again. So I got a job at McDonald's for which I stayed at for 3 weeks. It was actually really fun. But I jumped to Amazon packing boxes right when they accepted me because it was like $5 an hour more. It's like, well, obviously I'm gonna leave and go work overnights at Amazon. Like this is where I was. It was kind of my rock bottom, honestly. I was willing to do pretty much any job. I remember while I was working at Amazon, I even tried to get like another warehouse job that looked like it sucked even more than packing boxes at Amazon because they would pay me like 18 an hour instead of 13.25. So yeah, I was pretty desperate. And actually it was at Amazon while I was doing this monotonous job that required zero critical thinking or creativity and was a total soul suck that I realized I can't do this for the rest of my life. Like I can't keep hopping around jobs like this. It's too much. It's gonna kill me inside. And I started looking at alternate options. Like I found myself googling jobs that don't require a college degree that pay at least $40,000 a year. Enter right, and then I found a listicle, and one of the items on like this list of maybe like 15 to 20 jobs was a web developer. And I'm like, all right, what's that? Or how can what do you have to know how to do for that? And it talked about how, it's helpful to learn like a programming language. I'm like, I know languages, I can learn languages. Uh, and then creativity was important. You didn't really have to know design. Designers could do that, but it helps if you have like an eye for it, I guess. I'm like, I've been looking for a job that uses problem solving and creativity, uh, and that pays a lot. And this seems to be that. And people are saying they're getting these jobs without going to school, well, going to college. And I'm like, well, I mean, this seems like my best bet because, like, I was looking at any other options I had, and like, my only work experience was customer service at this point, like retail and bartending and whatever. It's like, I just gotta, I gotta be realistic here. This might be my only option to like not have to go back to school for something else. So I gave it a shot. I'm like, sure, let's just kind of try this out. So I went on Coursera and I found an HTML CSS course. I found a Python course. Python really didn't interest me. It was kind of boring, and I think it's just the way it was taught in that course because I kind of like it now. Um, and then HTML CSS seemed really fun though. So I don't know. That was kind of planting the seed. That was kind of earlier in like the middle of December, not December, middle of the fall of like 2017. And then I found Free Code Camp. That was in December. And actually today marks the 5-year anniversary of, wait, no, 5, 6 years since I wrote my first Hello World on Free Code Camp. And honestly, Free Code Camp saved my life because I got so excited about programming after that. I went through all of their front end curriculum. I did all the projects, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And, that kind of got me through the following, like the rest of Amazon, just this hope, like, hey, I'm making something happen outside of work. Like right when I got home, I would just, I would, when I had my it was like 4 10-hour shifts overnight, but then 3 days off. Those 3 days off, I'd just be coding the whole time. I'm like, gotta learn, gotta get out of this job, gotta get my first coding job. And I learned a lot. Uh, and then I from this Amazon job, I ended up wrecking my wrist a little bit. So repetitive stress on your wrist will do that. So I tried to stick it out because it was the most money I'd ever gotten from a job, and I just wanted to make it work. but a month of taking ibuprofen didn't help at all. It actually still just got worse. So I had to quit because I value my health more than I guess having food to eat. So I left the job, and my sister at the time, she was running like a side gig doing shipped shopper stuff. So she would be doing grocery delivery just for a couple of extra bucks during the week. And I'm like, I'm going to do that full time. So I did that like 40 hours plus a week, just running orders all day. And it was kind of nice. It kind of introduced me to the world of freelancing and gig work. And I kind of got, you know, I really liked how that was, just being able to set my own hours, even though the pay was terrible. It was enough for the time being, and I managed to, between that and Amazon, barely just scraped enough together to move back to my college town, so that I could be ready to, go to school when I had the money for it. And I got a job doing, I got a job being like a cashier at Walgreens, which was like a 10-minute walk from the apartment I got into. So it was a good gig. Like, I didn't need a car. I didn't have a car. So I well, I did have a car, but I didn't want to rely on it because that's the last thing I'd need for that thing to break down, and then I'd have like no way to earn money. So, and I really, really just context, I did not want to move back home. I know a lot of people are going to think that, like, why didn't you just move back home? It's like, well, I didn't have a great relationship with my parents to the point where I just wanted to stay away. So, um, yeah, I ended up working at Walgreens. I turned 24 that that year, 2018 in April, and I was able to apply for financial aid again for the fall. I was working like three other jobs at this point. Um, well, actually, no, the Walgreens thing happened later in like August of 2018. I remember getting a bartending job at a bowling alley while I was being a fry cook at an on-campus dining place, and then I was also cleaning apartments and doing light maintenance work for the apartment company that I lived in, I guess. So it was weird. Maybe I don't know. It was kind of interesting times, like 55 hours a week, maybe. But when I went back to school, I was doing the Walgreens thing. Uh, Somewhere in there, I had like 4 weeks while I was, I didn't have any other jobs because those three I mentioned were like seasonal only during the semester. And like I had to look for another job. And that's when I got the Walgreens job being a cashier. But the 3 weeks I had in between, I was just like coding 40 hours a week on Free Code Camp. And yeah, I guess by the time I got back to school, I finished all of the front end curriculum on Free Code Camp, and I was still working like 20 hours, 25 hours a week at Walgreens while I was doing like 20 hours a week field study uh, at a middle school that was like 25 minutes drive away. So I was pretty busy. And at the time, like, I had already met my now wife this same year. So while I was working those three jobs, that's when I met her. And like, she was with me all the way through all this struggle busing and me still learning to code. And we still found time to hang out with each other and go on dates. And yeah, honestly, if it weren't for her, I don't know if I would have like emotionally made it through that last semester of college, but I did. And she got to be there at my graduation, and you know, it was pretty rewarding. And I was still working at Walgreens at the time when I graduated, but I remember wanting to move to, the city where she was living so that we could move in together. And because I think at that point it would have been like a whole year together and we just really vibed, and we thought this was like a long-term thing, and we wanted to invest a little bit in it and move in together. And my boss at Walgreens recommended me to a store in the city I was wanting to move to. And I thought I was just going to also be a cashier there, but they asked me if I wanted to be a shift manager. And I'm like, well, obviously, money, like, sign me up. And it was one of the more stressful jobs that I've had in my life. I still think it was a cakewalk compared to Amazon, but Yeah, I was definitely motivated to keep learning to code and get out of that situation. So I think I worked like all of 2019 doing that up until September when I got my first tech job. But during that time, I learned React on Scrimba. I got to do two whiteboarding interviews, and I failed both of them miserably. One because of like data structures and algorithms knowledge that I didn't have, and the other one because I just didn't remember React and like CSS off the top of my head yet. So that was interesting. And my first tech job that I got, it was a result of me just realizing, look, if I want to get into tech, then I want to get into tech. I don't need to be a developer first. I can go from the ground up, you know? If I'm worth it, the company there will see it and it might be easier to just like transition into a developer role later. And I turned out to be right about that. I entered Fetch Rewards, my last company that I was working at before Trek Bicycle, where I'm at now. I entered that company as a email support agent. So I would be writing back to users who were talking to us through the app, and yeah, using a tool like called Zendesk to go through a queue of like emails to send out. Honestly, when I got there, I'm like, "Are you serious? Like, this is it? Is this a joke?" Because they were willing to pay me 17 an hour to do this, which was absurd money to me at that time because Walgreens was paying me 13.75 an hour to, run around like a crazy person and manage like all the things. And I was getting like a $3, almost $4 raise to like sit at a desk and write emails. Like, hell yeah. Like, could it get better? Um, Fucking Chandler moment right there. Could it be any easier? And yeah, I was kind of living it up, but I still realized like, okay, I'm gonna kick ass at this job because I want them to be able to recommend me to the engineering department when there's an opportunity that opens up. And I spent like 6 months doing this thing, doing the customer service email thing. And then my manager's like, you know what? There's an opportunity for like a back end engineering internship. Are you interested in trying to go for it? And I said, well, yeah, thank you for letting me know. And I had a great relationship with my manager, which, you should if you want other opportunities. And um, yeah, long story short, failed it. For any developers listening to this, I forgot the package.json file in my Node web service. Even though the web service worked, it did this, it did the thing. I didn't include a dependencies file so that the interviewer could run my project, which was a super noob mistake. But I was a noob, so what do you expect, right? Um, and I had only taken like half of a Node.js course on Udemy before doing this, so it's not like I was super well versed in backend or anything. I just wanted any engineering opportunity. But the cool thing is, when I failed it, they were like, you're not ready for this yet, but you're close, and we think you'd be good in QA. And I'm like, what's that? I've never heard of QA. And so I go Googling and like, well, okay, what is a quality assurance specialist or what is all this stuff? And it turns out software testing is a career by itself. The developers aren't testing everything like, uh, coding boot camps would have you believe like, oh, developers just do everything, including testing. It's like, not really. Like they unit test, they test their functions, they test their code, their components and stuff, but they're not actually being the user and going through and testing everything end to end and like playing with the network and playing with security vulnerabilities or trying to like find issues in the UI or I don't know, like maybe they are, but it's not really like their job at the end of the day, unless you're at like a super early stage startup. Usually there's a testing team. So yeah, I learned all about how QA works because I did end up getting through the interview process and they liked me for QA. They liked that I had the business knowledge from being a customer service a support agent. I already knew how the app worked and what to expect. because I had been helping users with their app problems for 6 months. The catch here, though, is that COVID hit in 2020 when all this was going on. It's like around March 2020 was when I had my final interview with the QA team, and that was my first remote interview because the other ones had been done in person with like the QA manager up until that point in the office. And that was interesting because looking back, having my entire first QA job be remote is a kind of a unique experience. At least it was at the time, because I never got to meet my team until at least a year after that, and by then I was doing automation. So yeah, that first year taught me that it's important to have like three things when you're being a remote tech employee. You need really good written communication and be able to communicate asynchronously with your team. You need to care enough about your work to actually show up and do it. And yeah, there's things that you have to like go after yourself. You can't expect people to kind of like notice you and remember that you're there and give you everything. Like I was really annoying and I would like reach out to people who were onboarding me like every day, just checking in to see if like okay, I learned this thing, I did this thing, does this look good? um just aggressively seeking feedback from people. And that's a pattern I've noticed with really successful people in remote work environments. Like they don't treat it like an office thing, like, oh, I'm doing this and my boss will eventually walk over and say hi to me. It's like, no, people are busy, and in a remote environment, it's easy to forget that other people are there as well. So you kind of got to be proactively making yourself more visible. But I will say that the one big way I made myself more visible was making a web tool in QA to solve like a problem with our testing process. And I got a raise out of that. That was my first raise that I'd gotten based on merit, which was kind of neat. Um, Kind of became addicting because this place gave people raises more than once a year if they earned it. It wasn't just like a typical annual review, 3% bump thing. Like they gave you good increases if you were doing good work, or doing more advanced work. So I guess it kind of gamified the experience for me and made me want to like grow faster. So I noticed that my boss was looking to start an automation team, and he was about to hire like a automation engineer to start, doing mobile automation on the team. And yeah, I when that person got hired, I waited a bit, but I started asking them about the technologies they were using and how I could learn and prepare to be an automation engineer on the team. I ended up building a Ruby calculator app that with RSpec tests just to practice automation. And this was all still in 2020 when the world was just going to shit because of COVID. But I'm like, no, I'm taking advantage of this while everybody else is running all over the place and worried out of their minds. I'm going to grow and I'm going to skyrocket through this company, and I'm going to make my dreams come true. Because I just felt like, in the worst of times, that's when like the success stories happen out of nowhere. So I wanted to be one. And yeah, 2021, early 2021, I was promoted to automation engineer because I was the one who was clearly wanting it, and I was going after it the hardest out of anyone on the team. And the only two people that got there before me were ones who preceded me in the pecking order. Like they got on the QA team first. They mentioned that they had interest in automation first, but out of a team of like 10 plus people at that point, I was the one who showed the most initiative and I got the opportunity. And I was able to help other people later on transition over to automation, and I did a lot of cool stuff that I'm really proud of. But that's kind of where the story kind of ends, and I can say the rest is history. Because yeah, I can talk later in another video about how you know how I learned automation specifically, maybe the stuff I've done with automation. But yeah, that was my sort of like rags to riches story. Because I definitely don't make $17 an hour anymore. And I just thank myself and everybody who's helped me every day mentally, just and the amount of luck I've had too, just being able to have this opportunity to work in tech and work remotely. And it's honestly changed the entire trajectory of both mine and my wife's lives. It's given us the opportunity to travel, to go out to nice places to eat, to live in nice places. It's life changing. Like they say, money doesn't make you happy, but I think it does. I think a good amount of money will make anybody's problems go away. Uh, because a lot of our problems are related to money, and the ones that aren't, well, that's kind of on us to solve those. But you can, if you can think of any financial stressors in your life, a good tech job can probably solve some of them. All right, so I really liked what Mal did with pros and cons, so I'm going to do that too. So my journey, taking the path that I took, like self-teaching and doing like the internal stuff within Fetch Rewards to start my career. I would say the pros of that, like I didn't have to change majors in college. I got to go to Spain and, you know, do the like learn Spanish, which I really had wanted to learn. I didn't have to sacrifice that to go down a traditional path because like I just found out way too late to do it anyways. But like let's say I had the money and the time and I just stayed and did a computer science major as well. I don't know if that would have been worth it for me per se, because I just learned so much not doing that. I kind of had to go through the ringer as a result of not having enough money to take the easy route and like get the traditional computer science degree. But, and like I got to become bilingual and travel earlier in my life because of that. I also discovered the power of internal mobility at startup companies. It's something that I hope is talked about more nowadays. It's not as fun or sexy as like going and teaching yourself and immediately getting a developer job like 6 months later. But I think it teaches you the power of networking, and it's a gross word, but just making friends and meeting people in a company and kind of understanding how the business works from like multiple people's perspectives along the way. I think it's really valuable, and I think anybody who can get good at internal mobility and like lateral moves within a company, like it kind of opens up this whole new set of opportunities for you. On the con side of things, my data structures and algorithms skills are weak sauce. Like, I never really had to grind leak code because that's not how I got my first coding job. And everyone knows once you get the experience, you might have to grind leak code for interviews later if you want to switch companies, but most of the time, you don't. And a lot of companies these days, the more progressive ones, are giving take home projects instead of these like leak code problems. So if you know how to like functionally do your job, you can bypass the leak code stuff sometimes. I've actually had that experience when applying for jobs after I left, when I left Fetch. So there was some that just wanted me to like the job I have now. The take home was like do this API automation proof of concept, and it's like I literally did that at Fetch, so no leak code necessary. And I think that's like it's honestly the better way to conduct interviews. Like, can you actually do the job? Like, I don't care what your algorithms can do. Like, if you can't actually write test automation, like, get lost. That's the way it should be. As for another one was it's kind of a resume killer a little bit. Not having a computer science major on my education section, it says like Spanish teacher education. People are probably like, what? Now that might make me a good like diversity hire in terms of, I mean, I also have ADHD, so I'm always checking that box. But there's this idea that like maybe non-conventional or unconventional paths into tech can be valuable for like thought diversity or whatever. I have no diversity otherwise. I'm a white male. Like whatever, and I'm not claiming to be some like diverse person or whatever. Um, except neurodivergent. Woo! Everybody out there who's got some sort of thing up here, I'm with you. And being corny as fuck right now, but the last con I would say is Java. I I know I would have learned Java a lot more if I was in college. I actually took like a few weeks of a Java course in my last semester just to try it before I realized I had zero time for that. Um, but yeah, Java is kind of king right now for QA automation jobs, and I kind of regret not learning more of it. I could still learn it, obviously, but it would have been nice to just get that out of the way when I first started. Um, it's fine though. We're all learning. We can all learn new stuff later. But yeah, that's been my journey. This video is a hell of a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but I know I ramble. So hopefully you stayed with me most of the time. Hopefully my animated kind of, squirrel like personality kept you hanging on this whole time. But if not, I get it. I'm going to share this on X right away once it finishes posting on YouTube. But thanks for again, just everyone on X for uh, just being so kind to me and supporting me, because I've kind of been in a rut recently, and it just helps to have some cool friends on the internet to get me through that. And yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I think I still like doing career coaching and mentoring. I might do it for free for a while just because I don't really know what I can charge for it, if anything, yet. So I've already done one. I've done one mentoring call. It's been kind of cool. I got really excited about it, and I have another one coming up this weekend. And then I'm kind of just not booked at all for that. But yeah, if you're interested in a QA automation or QA, just like manual testing or any sort of like quality assurance stuff, um, I do weekend mentoring calls, and maybe I'll be better about posting that link somewhere. But yeah, just hit me up on X. It's at Steven Boucher. I guess I can post a link to my X profile. But yeah, I'm going to end this now before it goes to 40 minutes. So see you, everybody.